So last time I showed you some New York Times newspapers from the 1860s, and I thought I would follow that video with this Saturday, April 29th, 1865 Harper's Weekly, because where we left off, um, President Lincoln had been assassinated, but they had no idea who had done it. And with this Harper's Weekly on the 29th, we do. So I thought this would be an interesting thing to look at. And just thought I'd show it to you in a little bit more detail than some of my other videos. So, as you can see, I really like the what do you call it? The letterhead. I don't know what that's called, but it's very artistic and almost biblical looking. Harper's Weekly, a journal of civilization. New York, Saturday, April 29th, 1865. 10 cents a copy, $4 for a subscription. And the cover story is John Wilkes Booth, the murder of the president. And here's a picture of John Wilkes Booth. And he was considered a handsome man, one of the most handsome men alive at the time that the assassination occurred. It's kind of surreal to think about it. We've heard it for so many years, but try to make an allegory or a metaphor for what this would be like today, and imagine one of the most famous celebrities doing something like this, and how shocking and strange that would be. And there, his signature on the bottom. So this was just a very shocking, unexpected thing. And I'm going to read a little bit. The 14th of April is a dark day in our country's calendar. And I went into that a little bit yesterday when I pointed out that the Fort Sumter newspaper and the Lincoln assassination newspaper were both April 15th. But the beginnings are on the 14th. So the 14th of April is a dark day in our country's calendar. On that day, 4 years ago, the national flag was for the first time lowered at the bidding of traitors. Upon that day, after a desperate conflict with treason for 4 long, weary years, a conflict in which the nation had so far triumphed that she breathed again in the joyous prospect of coming peace, her chosen leader was stricken down by the foul hand of the cowardly assassin. Exultation that had known no bounds was exchanged for boundless grief. The record upon which had been inscribed all sorts of violence possible to the most malignant treason that ever sought to poison a nation's heart had been almost written full, but not quite full. Murder had run out its category of possible digress against the helpless loyalists in the South, against women and children whose houses had been burned down over their heads, and against our unfortunate prisoners who had been tortured and literally starved to death. But there still remained one victim for its last rude stroke, one victim for whom it was whispered in rebel journals south and north. There was still reserved the dagger of a Brutus. Beaten on every field of recognized warfare, treason outdid its very self and killed our president. The man who lent himself to traitors for this vile purpose was John Wilkes Booth, who sold himself, it may be, partly for the pieces of silver, but chiefly for the infamous notoriety attaching to such an act. There was an ancient villain who deliberately purposed to perpetuate the memory of his name among men by an act of awful sacrilege, a sacrilege so striking as never to be forgotten and be burned, the temple of the Ephesian Diana. Aristides gained his end and has been remembered accordingly. A memory far more detestable is in store for John Wilkes Booth, who dared, by the commission of an infinitely greater sacrilege, to bring a whole people to tears. He was the third son born in America of the eminent English tragedian Junius Brutus Booth. There were three brothers, Junius Brutus Jr., Edwin, and John Wilkes, all of whom inherited a predilection for the stage. Edwin, however, is the only one of those who had attained a very eminent position as an actor, and he is probably surpassed by no living man. In justice to him, it is proper here to state that he is true and loyal and exacts our sincerest sympathy. The elder Booth, father of these three actors, died 13 years ago. He passed the quieter portion of his life upon his farm in Harford County, some 30 miles from Baltimore. John Wilkes Booth, the murderer, was born in 1839 and is now only 26 years of age. He went upon the stage at the early age of 17 simply as John Wilkes. As stock actor, he gained a fair reputation, and afterward, assuming his full name, he began a more audacious career. But partly on account of his dissolute habits, he never achieved a marked success. He performed chiefly in the South and the West. He had appeared but few times before a New York audience. In person, he bears considerable resemblance to his father. His eyes are dark and large, his hair of the same color, inclined to curl, his features finely molded, his form tall, and his address pleasing. He abandoned his profession recently on account of a bronchial affection. It is said that he has frequently threatened to kill President Lincoln. His companions have violent secessionists, and there are doubtless many others involved to a great or lesser degree in this crime. The attempt to assassinate Secretary Seward was made probably by an accomplice. It is supposed that Secretary Stanton and Andrew Johnson were to have been added to the list of victims. The latter, at least, received on Friday a card from Booth, but was not at home. Those who were acquainted with Booth's movements on the fatal Friday say that his manner was restless. He knew that the president and his party intended to be present at Ford's Theater in the evening. He asked an acquaintance if he should attend the performance, remarking that if he did, he would see some unusually fine acting. It was the general expectation that General Grant would form one of the president's party, and there would be many who supposed that a blow was intended for him as well as the president. The latter had passed the day in the usual manner. In the morning, his son, Captain Robert Lincoln, breakfasted with him. The captain had just returned from the capitulation of Lee, and the president listened with great interest in his narration of the detailed circumstances. After breakfast, he conversed for an hour with Speaker Colfax about his future policy as to the rebellion in which he was about to submit to his cabinet. At 11 o'clock, the cabinet met. Both the president and General Grant were present. Having spent the afternoon with Governor Oglesby, Senator Yates, and other leading citizens of the state, he went to the theater in the evening with Mrs. Lincoln in order to unite in the general expression of popular joy for our late victories. The party consisted of Mrs. Senator Harris and daughter and Major Henry Rathbone of Albany. They arrived at 10 minutes before 9 o'clock and occupied a private box overlooking the stage. The play that evening was The American Cousin. Booth came upon his errand at about 10 o'clock. He left his horse in charge at the rear of the theater and made his way to the president's box. This box is a double one in the second tier at the left of the stage. When occupied by the presidential party, the separating partition is removed, and the two boxes are thus thrown into one. We give an accurate plan of the box on page 259. According to Major Rathbone's statement, the assassin must have made his preparations in the most deliberate manner beforehand. Of this fact there are at least 4 proofs, as we shall see. Stealthily approaching the dark passage-way leading to the box, Booth, after having effected an entrance, closed the hall door, and then, taking a piece of board which he had prepared for the occasion, placed one end of it in an indentation excavated in the wall, about 4 feet from the floor, and the other against the molding of the door panel a few inches higher. He thus made it impossible for anyone to enter from without, and securing himself against the intrusion in that direction, he proceeded to the doors of the box. There were two of these. Here also the villain had carefully provided beforehand the means by which he might, unnoticed himself, observe the position of the parties inside. With a gimlet or small bit, he had bored a hole in the door panel, which he afterward reamed and out with his knife so as to leave a little larger than a buckshot on the inside, while on the other side it was sufficiently large to give his eye a wide range. This is a stirring account of the assassination, and I hope you're enjoying this reading. It continues, and onto the next page, all the way through the point when he shoots President Lincoln with a small derringer, very similar to this model right here. And a single shot derringer. And then he leapt onto after he shot President Lincoln, he stabbed Major Henry Rathbone in the arm with a knife, gravely stabbed him down to the bone. Then he jumped onto the stage, but his spur on his boot caught on some of the bunting that was decorating below the president's box, and this caused him to fall awkwardly and break his leg. But he still said "Sic Semper Tyrannis," which is the state motto of Virginia, but also in Latin it means "thus to all tyrants." And he made his way to his horse and rode away. Here, after the account, is a dirge. A dirge is generally the definition of a dirge is a song written and sung in mourning of a person, but it's also used to describe, like in this case, a poem. And this was written just a few days after the assassination of the president. The next article is about Abraham Lincoln and his leadership over the last very eventful 4 years. And also describes the other victims of the conspiracy, or the intended victim, President Johnson, and another victim who was seriously injured, the Secretary of State Seward, who was stabbed. He would have been fatally stabbed, but he had recently broken his jaw, I think, and he had a brace around it to keep it still while he was sleeping, and the knife that the assassin used to stab him deflected off of that, causing sparks. It was interesting. It saved his life. This says, "Great Pan is dead." The Flag of Sumter. The Folly of Crime. These articles are a mixture of mourning the president and reconciling the end of the Civil War, because it had just ended too. This was a lot to take in 1 week. Here's a diagram, a plan of the box occupied by President Lincoln at Ford's Theater on April 14th. So, dark corridor leading from the dress circle to box is H. An entrance to the corridor is I. The bar used by Booth to prevent entrance from without is J. No. That's I. I'm sorry. We're one letter behind on everything. J is the dress circle. Now here's some artwork. This picture illustrates President Lincoln sitting in this rocking chair next to his wife, Major Rathbone here, Clara Harris here, and John Wilkes Booth sneaking behind him, wielding a dagger and a derringer right here. It says the assassination of President Lincoln at Ford's Theater. The next picture shows Booth as he jumped onto the stage. We see the box. We see the bunting where his foot caught right here. There's a picture of George Washington on the box. There's Lincoln after he's been shot. People looking. And interestingly, this also fell on the date of Fort Sumter. So we're seeing a lot of emotion in these pictures. First, we see the shelling of Fort Sumter right here. There's a picture of Major Robert Anderson, who was the defender of Fort Sumter. The lowering of the flag and the raising of the flag that was actually done by President Lincoln. And then an angel, the dawn of peace, a peace angel holding the laurels floating over Fort Sumter. What we have next is some articles that just appeared in Harper's Weekly that was business as usual. And first we have a little poem, Home and Friends. And then we have a story serial, The Black Sheep. And Harper's Weekly, in addition to reporting the news, also had serials and stories, poetry, jokes, and so forth, just to fill the paper out and give people something to be interested in besides news. Unlike the New York Times, that was strictly news and advertisements and classifieds and stock reports and so forth, Harper's Weekly was a journal that had a diverse range of material. So they were hoping that you would want to subscribe to it and follow these stories, get your news, and even have advertisements and everything all in one. My home in Cloudland. Here's some interesting items. Now here's a really fine piece of artwork. And this is a very, very nicely done sketch of President Lincoln's coffin being mourned by the Angel of Peace, the same angel we saw over Fort Sumter with her laurels. A picture of the funeral here. Here's a sailor and a soldier mourning, just looking completely just inconsolable. Just a very stirring picture. Now, what happened to Lincoln's body after he was shot is that it was embalmed heavily, and it was put on a train, and it toured from all the way from Washington, D.C. to his home in Springfield, where it would be buried. And by the time it made it to Springfield, the body had turned sort of a shade of black, that from the decomposition and the dryness, and they had embalmed it several times during the journey too. So interestingly, in 1901, after the body had been stolen from his grave, they recovered the body in the coffin, and they opened the coffin, and with a camera and some witnesses. This was 1901, and they wanted to document number one. They want to make sure his body was correct, that was in there, and they wanted a last look at the president, some 35 years after the assassination. So when they opened the coffin, he was remarkably intact. His eyebrows had disappeared, and there was a layer of yellow mold on his black suit, but his beard and his hair and his face were all intact, and he had an expression, sort of a sad expression on his face. There was, I believe, a photograph taken, and they brought in a young boy to witness it. So someone would still be alive for a while who had seen the face of Lincoln. Here's some more poetry. The Swallows, The Torn Glove. These are just stories. Some are serialized and some are maybe full-on stories. The Elixir of Spring. And let's just read one of these poems just to get a sense of the time and place. So, The Elixir of Spring. Nor in the bloom and music that haunt the south's wind's breath, for the bloom may fade at midnight, and the music be stilled in death. Not in the bursting fragrance of leaf or bud or flower, for their beauty may be nipped and chilled by the frost of a single hour. Not in darling's heart, nestled in sunlight there, spring's spirit dwells apart from heaven and earth and air, purer than vernal fragrance, brighter than vernal skies. In the darling's truth and beauty, there's spring that never dies. Now we skip over to the laughter section. It's called Humors of the Day, and believe it or not, even on a day like this, they tried to put some jokes in Harper's Weekly. So, a bonnet without a face is like the grandstand without a race. Novel economy. A new system of economy is related to have been discovered by a savant of the Jockey Club. He noticed a poor man with a wooden leg one day walking past his hotel and gave him a franc. The next day he saw the supposed beggar, and he had changed the wooden leg from the right to the left leg. Enraged at the deception, he went up to the man and explained, "You, rascal, you had the wooden leg on the other leg yesterday. You are not lame at all." "Monsieur," was the response with dignity, "I never said I was. I wear a wooden leg for economy, so as not to wear out my trousers, and I changed the leg to prevent one leg of the trousers wearing out before the other." A purse without money is like a comb without the honey. So apparently, the humor may not make you laugh now, but the humor was in a lot of cases in word puns or jokes about, like economy, like the idea of saving money and stuff. And this might have made people chuckle then, especially at the time with rationing and so forth. The New York ladies are dying at a fearful rate. Red hair is the object. And it's a pun. The New York ladies are dying at a fearful rate. Red hair is the object. So they're dyeing their hair red. Geese, dull as they are, imitate men. Notice that if one of the flock drinks, the rest follow. That's just a... it might seem corny now, but this was humor. This is what they did back then. What breed of sheep does the ram Stonewall belong to? Why, the merino, of course. I'm not even sure I get that. And then we got an article about Paris fashions. And we have some pictures. So, Harper's Weekly was also known for its artwork, unlike the New York Times, which rarely had anything other than text. We have pictures. So we have the Siege of Mobile, Wreck of the Osage, and the Monitor Milwaukee. And at this point, they were calling all of these ships the Monitors. These little warships. Destruction of the Tinclad. So these are like action pictures. People want to see some action. Mushroom anchor torpedoes. So we're talking about naval warfare here. Landing of the national forces at the mouth of the Fish River below Mobile, March 23rd, 24th, and 28th, 1865. And this is right close to where I live. But imagine just going out and seeing that in Mobile Bay. That's just amazing, too. Here we have Sherman's Army, the 3rd Division of the 14th Corps crossing Juniper Creek. Another action picture, and you see the fire behind them as they're burning their way through. This is Paris Fashions for April 1865. So we're in the Victorian era, and it's consistent with what we're seeing. Very wide dresses, very detailed. When we think of Victorian, we think of very covered up. Now we're getting into the advertisement section. So Harpers and Brothers, this is the company that puts out Harper's Weekly. You can get the history of Julius Caesar. So you can purchase books right from the newspaper here if you wanted to do some reading about history. Then there's Headley's Life of General William T. Sherman. So they already got a biography of him. He's still out there at this day. At this very time, he's still out there leading his troops. But there's already being an authentic and reliable board of his early life and remarkable career, forming the 4th volume of the Library of Modern American Heroes for youth. So this is kind of going to be geared to kids. So they've already written books about General Grant, General Mitchell, General Captain Erickson. So here's some sheet music. It's all up in Dixie, and that's obviously about the end of the war. Fairy albums, forbidding, 40 pictures, $1.25. 80 pictures, $1.50. Trade supply, books, pictures, albums. John Wilkes Booth. Look at that. Photographs of John Wilkes Booth. 25 cents. Now is that in bad taste? But you can buy your photograph of John Wilkes Booth if you want one. Pocket albums. Here's something about a powerful stimulant. Stationery. There's another song called Love on the Brain. Upham's Pimple Banisher. The Japanese Hair Stain. Watches, chains. Grecian compound for facial hair. Brazilian hair curler. Lots of stuff about growing mustaches. Jewelry. Artificial legs. Dr. Poland's White Pine Compound for sore throat, croup, whooping cough. It's right here. Here's the testimonials talking about how good it is. Gold-bearing bonds. Playing cards. That was some... The American Card Company's new Union playing cards with a national emblem. So playing cards was not a very dignified thing to own. So this is a little bit, this is kind of crazy and scandalous here. But they're going to put the emblem of the Union Army on it. But still, you wouldn't want to be caught with playing cards. Brandreth's pills, which are known to be the most reliable purgative, while they are harmless for the tenderest aids or weakest frame. In full doses, most active and searching in their operation, diving into the inmost recesses of the body, carrying all impurities in the bowels from whence they are expelled, thus curing the most life-threatening diseases, and over 100 years' experience has proved their innocence as well as their strength to restore health. Gold pins, puzzles, sweat-proof soldiers' money belts, a truss for hernia. Hernias were a big deal back then. buy a pistol. Get a memory of Abraham Lincoln watch. That's pretty fast. So you can buy your picture of John Wilkes Booth and in memory of Abe Lincoln watch all on the same day. Here's some more pictures. A naughty papa is the caption. It says, young mother, just take him, Charles. You've no idea what a weight he is. Paterfamilias. My dear girl, what are you thinking of? 10 to 1, I should drop it down and break it to pieces. These are just joke pictures. Mattresses, steel collars, pineapple cider, rubber gloves, a writing and toilet case, smoking pipes, eyeglasses, special notice: all New York State bounties payable apply by letter or in person. United States Army Agency, Bleecker Street, for settlement of all claims of any nature against the government. So what's going on with this? Probably, say you joined the army and there was a bounty to enlist, which meant you would get a bonus, like for enlisting. Have you ever heard the term bounty jumper? Because a lot of people would join and then they collect that bounty and then they would run off. Well, anyway, they stopped paying it, so they would give you a voucher. So now that the war's winding down, you can go and collect it. But if you go to this place, I bet you anything that they're gonna take a portion of it. And that's how they're making their money. Because a lot of people, they didn't know how to collect it, and they're taking advantage of that. Interesting. I hope this was a nice little journey back into the past for you. So we went through this Harper's Weekly and read some of it and looked through it, and I hope you got something out of this and enjoyed it. So until next time, please rate, comment, subscribe, and click the bell icon. And if you like the video, let me know, and I'll keep doing more like this. All right, bye.